Imagine screaming on a roller coaster, only to realize the empty seat next to you just moved. Across the UK, theme parks hide terrifying secrets: drowned ghosts in log flumes, phantom children on carousels, and cursed coasters that never stop running, even when empty. These aren't stories. These are real hauntings. Tonight, we're counting down the 10 most haunted theme parks where the scariest rides aren't the ones you buy tickets for. If you hear footsteps behind you in an empty park, don't turn around. Let's begin. Subscribe now, or risk missing the next park where real ghosts still ride the coasters after dark. 1. Alton Towers. Alton Towers, one of the UK's most famous theme parks, is not just known for its thrilling rides, it's also home to some of the country's darkest ghost stories. The park sits on the grounds of an old Gothic-style mansion, and many believe the land is haunted by spirits from the past. One of the most chilling tales is that of the White Lady, a ghost often seen near the ruins of the old Alton Towers castle. Visitors and staff have reported seeing a woman in a flowing white dress wandering the gardens, her face filled with sadness. Some say she was a heartbroken servant who took her own life after a nobleman rejected her love. Others claim she was a lady of the house who died tragically. Whatever the truth, her ghostly figure has been spotted for centuries, especially at dusk, leaving witnesses frozen in fear. Another haunted spot is the Smiler ride, which has a dark history even beyond its infamous 2015 crash. Workers have reported strange noises, shadowy figures, and an eerie feeling of being watched when the park is empty. Some believe the spirits of past workers or even victims of old accidents still linger there. The most terrifying story involves a security guard who swore he saw a ghostly child laughing near the ride late at night, only for the laughter to suddenly turn into screams before vanishing into the darkness. Even the park's underground tunnels, once used by servants, are said to be filled with ghostly whispers and footsteps. People have heard disembodied voices calling their names, and some have felt cold hands touching them when no one is there. The most haunted area is the old chapel ruins, where visitors have seen ghostly monks praying, their hollow chants echoing through the empty halls. With so many tragic events over the years, accidents, suicides, and even ancient battles, it's no surprise that Alton Towers is considered one of the UK's most haunted theme parks. Whether it's the Weeping White Lady, the Laughing Ghost Child, or the Restless Monks, the park's scariest attractions might not just be the rides, but the spirits that never left. If you visit, keep an eye out, you might just see something that isn't meant to be seen. 2. Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Blackpool Pleasure Beach, one of Britain's most famous amusement parks, is packed with thrilling rides, bright lights, and laughter, but beneath the fun lies a darker side. Many visitors and staff have reported ghostly encounters, strange noises, and chilling sightings that suggest the park is home to more than just roller coasters. One of the most haunted spots is the Ghost Train, a ride that might be more real than anyone expected. People have seen shadowy figures moving inside the dark tunnels when no one else is on the ride. Some have even felt icy hands grabbing them as they pass through, only to turn and find no one there. Workers who maintain the ride late at night have heard whispers and footsteps following them, even when they're completely alone. Another terrifying story comes from the Old River Caves ride, now closed but still standing. Years ago, a young girl reportedly drowned in the water tunnels, and since then, visitors have heard a child's laughter echoing from the empty ride. Some have even seen a pale, wet figure of a little girl standing near the water's edge, staring blankly before vanishing into the darkness. Security guards patrolling at night refuse to go near the area, claiming they've heard splashing sounds and sobbing when the ride is completely shut down. The park's most famous roller coaster, the Big One, also has its own ghostly legend. A maintenance worker once told a story of seeing a man in old-fashioned clothes standing on the tracks late at night. When he shouted at the figure to move, the man turned, his face twisted in horror, before disappearing into thin air. Some believe he was the ghost of a worker who died during the coaster's construction, still trapped on the ride forever. Even the park's underground staff tunnels are said to be haunted. Employees have reported cold spots, sudden gusts of wind in closed-off areas, and the sound of someone walking behind them, only to turn and see nothing. The most frightening tale is of a phantom security guard who appears in old-fashioned uniform, warning people to get out before fading away. With so many tragic accidents and unexplained deaths over the years, it's no wonder Blackpool Pleasure Beach is considered one of the UK's most haunted theme parks. Whether it's the drowned girl in the river caves, the ghostly worker on the Big One, or the unseen hands in the ghost train, some say the scariest part of this park isn't the rides, it's the spirits that never left. If you visit, keep your eyes open, because you might just see something that wasn't there when you first looked. 3. Thorp Park. Thorp Park, known for its heart-stopping roller coasters and terrifying horror mazes, hides something far more chilling than its manufactured scares. Built on the eerie landscape of an old gravel pit near the River Thames, the park sits on land with a dark history. Some say the water itself is cursed. The most haunted spot is the depths of the lake surrounding the park, where workers have reported seeing ghostly figures rising from the murky waters at night. Security guards patrolling after closing time swear they've heard splashing and gurgling whispers, as if something, or someone, is trying to climb out. One guard claimed to see a pale, bloated face staring up at him from beneath the surface before it vanished into the blackness. The park's infamous Darren Brown's ghost train ride, designed to play tricks on the mind, might actually be attracting real spirits. Visitors have reported feeling unseen hands gripping their shoulders inside the darkened carriages, while others have seen shadowy figures sitting beside them, only for the seats to be empty when the lights come on. Staff working late have heard phantom footsteps following them through the empty ride, and some have even smelled the sudden, overwhelming stench of rotting flesh with no explanation. But the most disturbing stories come from the ruins of the old Thorp Church, which once stood on the land before the park was built. Workers constructing the park in the 1970s claimed to hear ghostly hymns and organ music drifting across the empty fields at night. Even today, visitors near the lake sometimes report seeing the faint outline of a crumbling church steeple in the fog, a building that no longer exists. Some believe the spirits of the buried dead were disturbed when the land was dug up, and now they wander the park, angry and lost. The park's darkest legend, however, is tied to the Swarm roller coaster, where a worker allegedly died during construction. Since then, riders have reported feeling an invisible presence sitting next to them, breathing heavily in their ear. One terrified guest even captured a ghostly face in the back of their ride photo, a face that wasn't there when they boarded. With its cursed waters, phantom churches, and rides that attract more than just thrill seekers, Thorp Park's real horrors might not be the ones you pay to see. If you visit, keep your wits about you, because the scariest things here don't need special effects to make your blood run cold. For Pleasureland Southport. Pleasureland Southport may look like a cheerful seaside amusement park by day, but as the sun sets, something far more sinister awakens among its vintage rides and empty arcades. Built on a stretch of coastline with a tragic history of drownings and disasters, the park has become a playground for restless spirits. The most famous ghost is the little boy in blue, seen wandering near the old carousel. Witnesses describe a pale child in outdated clothing, staring blankly at riders before vanishing into thin air. Staff cleaning up after closing time have heard the sound of a child giggling near the empty ride, followed by sudden, unnatural silence. Some believe he's the ghost of a boy who fell from the carousel decades ago, doomed to relive his final moments forever. The park's ghost train holds its own dark secrets. Visitors report feeling icy hands brushing against them in the darkness, though no one else is in their carriage. Others have seen the silhouette of a tall man in a top hat standing motionless in the tunnels, a figure that disappears when the ride stops. Workers checking the tracks at night have heard phantom footsteps pacing behind them, and one employee swore he saw the decaying face of a woman pressed against the glass of a mirror inside the ride, her mouth open in a silent scream. But the most chilling stories come from the park's underground tunnels, originally used to transport coal to the old pier. Security guards refuse to enter these passageways after dark, reporting disembodied whispers echoing through the darkness and the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. One guard, investigating a strange noise, claimed to see a shadowy figure crawling toward him on all fours before it lunged. only to disappear inches from his face. Others have reported the smell of saltwater and rotting seaweed suddenly filling the air, as if the sea itself is seeping into the park, bringing the drowned with it. With its history of tragic accidents and its proximity to the merciless Irish Sea, Pleasureland Southport's ghosts seem tied to the water's endless hunger. Whether it's the lonely boy by the carousel, the top-hatted phantom in the ghost train, or the unseen thing crawling in the tunnels, the park's scariest attractions don't have operating hours. They come out when the lights go off, and they don't like visitors overstaying their welcome. If you hear a child's laughter where no child should be, or feel something brush your arm in the dark, it might be time to leave, before whatever's here decides to follow you home. 5. Gulliver's Kingdom. Gulliver's Kingdom sits nestled in the shadow of the brooding Peak District Mountains, its cheerful fairy tale theme belying the eerie happenings that plague this children's park after dark. Built on land once crisscrossed by ancient smuggling routes and dotted with forgotten graves, the park seems to stir something restless in the earth itself. The most persistent ghost is the crying woman, a spectral figure in tattered Victorian dress seen weeping near the park's miniature castle. Staff arriving at dawn have found puddles of icy water where she stands, though no rain has fallen. Some claim she's the spirit of a mother who lost her child to cholera when this land held makeshift plague pits, still searching the park for her little one. Visitors sometimes report hearing muffled sobs coming from empty playground tunnels, the sound moving closer until it feels like the weeping is right behind them, then stopping abruptly. The park's Dynamite Falls log flume has developed a grim reputation among maintenance crews. Workers checking the water pumps at night have reported seeing pale, bloated hands floating just beneath the surface before disappearing into the drain pipes. One terrified employee quit after seeing a child's face staring up at him from the flume's basin, a face that grinned with too many teeth before sinking into the dark water. Riders occasionally feel something brush against their legs during the descent, though the flume's shallow water makes this impossible. Some believe these are the drowned smugglers who once used the mountain streams to transport illicit goods, now doomed to linger in the man-made waterways. But the most disturbing activity centers around the Wild West area, where animatronic cowboys creak into life when no power runs through them. Night guards have heard the sound of galloping hooves and jangling spurs moving through the deserted streets, accompanied by the faint smell of gunpowder. Several have reported seeing a shadowy figure wearing a wide-brimmed hat standing perfectly still in the sheriff's office window, a figure that vanishes when approached. The park's oldest staff member once confessed that during construction, workers uncovered a skeleton with a rusted revolver clutched in its bones, likely a real outlaw from the 1800s. They buried it hastily under the gift shop foundation, and some say the gunslinger's ghost now patrols his accidental tomb. With its history of hidden graves, watery deaths, and Wild West violence, Gulliver's Kingdom proves that even places meant for children can't escape the past. The laughter of playing kids sometimes mixes with something older and sadder, whispers in the trees near the castle, splashes in the flume with no one there, the creak of spurs where no living soul walks. Come for the fairy tales, but leave before sunset, because the park's original inhabitants don't like sharing their mountain. 6. Bobbing John's Fun Park. Bobbing John's Fun Park in Fife, Scotland, might look like a harmless family attraction by day, but locals whisper about the chilling secrets that come alive when the last visitor leaves. Built near the ruins of a medieval battlefield where countless soldiers met bloody ends, the park seems to stir echoes of ancient violence when darkness falls. The most frequently seen ghost is the Headless Highlander, a shadowy figure in tattered tartan who drifts between the bumper cars and the arcade. Night guards have reported hearing the sound of a sword being dragged across concrete, followed by heavy footsteps that stop abruptly behind them, but when they turn, only a lingering smell of wet earth and metal remains. Visitors sometimes capture misty shapes in their photos near the pirate ship ride, shapes that weren't visible when the picture was taken. The park's haunted house attraction has terrified guests for reasons far beyond its plastic skeletons and fake cobwebs. Multiple people have reported feeling an icy breath on their necks inside the pitch-black corridors, though no one stands behind them. Others swear they've seen a pair of glowing red eyes watching them from the ceiling before disappearing into the darkness. Staff resetting the attraction at night often hear whispers in Old Scots dialect, phrases like, "Leave this place," and, "They're coming," murmured just inches from their ears. The most disturbing incident occurred when a group of teenagers snuck in after hours. They fled screaming after encountering a skeletal figure in chainmail that reached for them with bony fingers before dissolving into the shadows. But the park's darkest energy seems concentrated around the old wishing well, a fake attraction built over what was once a real well used during witch trials. Visitors who peer into its depths sometimes see faces staring back, faces that blink. Coins tossed into the well occasionally fly back out with unnatural force, as if thrown by an invisible hand. Groundskeepers have found the well's water inexplicably boiling at midnight, giving off a stench of burning hair. Local legend claims this is where accused witches were drowned, and their tormented spirits now curse anyone who disturbs their resting place. With its history of battles, executions, and forgotten graves, Bobbing John's Fun Park is more than just games and laughter. The ghosts here are angry, trapped between the modern world and their violent past. If you hear bagpipes playing from empty corners or feel something tug at your clothes near the well, don't stay to investigate, because in this park, the dead don't like being ignored. Come for the cotton candy, but leave before twilight, unless you want to meet the park's other visitors. 7. Drayton Manor. Drayton Manor, with its cheerful zoo and thrilling roller coasters, hides a darkness that emerges when the crowds disappear. The park stands on land soaked in centuries of history, from medieval battles to tragic accidents, and some say the dead never truly left. The most famous ghost is the Grey Lady, a sorrowful figure seen drifting near the park's old manor house. Visitors describe her as a misty woman in Victorian dress, her face twisted in grief before she vanishes into thin air. Staff locking up at night have heard the sound of a woman weeping near the lake, though no one is there. Some believe she's the spirit of a heartbroken mother who lost her child to drowning in the nearby river Anchor, forever searching the park for her lost little one. Others claim she's a servant girl who threw herself from the manor's tower after a doomed love affair, her final cries still echoing through the trees. The park's haunting ride, designed to scare visitors with special effects, seems to attract real spirits. Riders often report feeling unseen hands gripping their shoulders in the darkness, even when no one sits behind them. Others have seen ghostly faces pressed against the ride's mirrors, faces that weren't there when they boarded. Workers maintaining the attraction have heard footsteps following them through empty corridors and the sound of children giggling in boarded-up tunnels. The most terrifying incident happened to a night guard who swears he saw a pale figure crawling along the ceiling like a spider, its hollow eyes tracking his every move before it dropped into the shadows and disappeared. But the most chilling stories come from Thomas Land, the park's cheerful children's area. After closing, staff have reported seeing the animatronic trains moving on their own, their painted smiles seeming to twist into something more sinister in the moonlight. Parents sometimes snap photos of their children on the rides, only to discover shadowy figures sitting beside them in the pictures, figures no one saw when the photo was taken. One employee, cleaning the area alone, claims a child's voice whispered, "Help me," from inside the Tunnel of Terror ride, though the park was completely empty. With its tragic history and restless spirits, Drayton Manor's scariest secrets aren't found on any map. The laughter of children sometimes mixes with something older and sadder, a weeping woman by the lake, phantom hands in the haunting, or the eerie feeling of being watched from empty rides. Come for the thrills, but leave before the sun sets, because the park's ghosts don't like visitors overstaying their welcome. If you hear a child's voice where no child should be, or see a pale face reflected in a ride's window, it might be time to go, before whatever's here decides to follow you home. 8. Oakwood Theme Park. Oakwood Theme Park in Pembrokeshire, Wales, may be famous for its thrilling roller coasters, but few visitors realize they're screaming alongside more than just living guests. Built on land once used for ancient druid rituals and later as a cholera burial ground, the park pulses with an eerie energy that comes alive after dark. The most infamous spirit is the Green Lady, a ghostly woman in tattered robes seen wandering near the park's drenched water ride. Workers preparing the ride at dawn have found the seats soaked with icy water, though the ride hasn't operated all night. Some claim she's the spirit of a drowned servant girl from a nearby estate, her waterlogged corpse still trying to climb aboard. Visitors sometimes report seeing pale hands rising from the ride splash pool at twilight, fingers curling over the edge as if something's trying to pull itself out. The park's Megaphobia wooden coaster has its own dark legends. Maintenance crews checking the tracks at night often hear the sound of phantom riders, screams and laughter echoing through the empty structure, though no one's there. One engineer swears he saw a man in 19th-century work clothes standing on the tracks, his neck bent at an impossible angle before vanishing. Riders occasionally feel an unseen presence sitting beside them, breathing heavily in their ear during the steepest drops. Some believe these are the spirits of workers who died during the coaster's construction, forever trapped on the ride they built. But the most disturbing hauntings center around the park's old petting zoo area, now closed but still standing. Security cameras have captured shadowy figures moving between the empty animal pens at night, their shapes sometimes appearing to crawl on all fours. Staff report hearing animal sounds, bleating goats, clucking chickens, coming from the abandoned barns, though no animals have been kept there for years. The worst encounter happened to a cleaner who saw a small child standing in the empty zoo, their back turned. When he called out, the child slowly turned to reveal hollow black eyes and a mouth stretched too wide, letting out a scream that wasn't human before disappearing. With its history of ancient sacrifices, mass graves, and tragic accidents, Oakwood's ghosts seem angry at being disturbed. The creaking of coaster cars sometimes continues long after the park closes, accompanied by splashes in empty water rides and the sound of something scratching at the old zoo gates. Come for the adrenaline, but leave before sunset, because in Oakwood, some rides don't have height restrictions, and the park's permanent residents will take anyone who stays too late. If you feel an extra seat to press beside you on a coaster or see wet footprints leading away from dry rides, it's not your imagination, it's a warning to get out while you still can. 9. Camel Creek. Camel Creek, nestled in Cornwall's rugged landscape, presents itself as a cheerful family park filled with storybook charm. But beneath its colorful facade lies something far more unsettling, echoes of Cornwall's dark past that refuse to stay buried. The most frequently reported ghost is the miner's child, a small figure seen wandering near the park's old mine train ride. Visitors describe a boy in tattered 19th-century clothing, his face smeared with coal dust, staring blankly at passing trains before vanishing into thin air. Staff members cleaning the ride at night have heard the sound of a child coughing violently, followed by phantom footsteps running down empty tunnels. Some believe he's the spirit of a young mine worker who died in a collapse when the land was still an active tin mine, forever reliving his final shift. Others claim to have seen his small handprints appearing on freshly cleaned windows, prints that smell faintly of damp earth and metal. The park's Dragon's Lair play area holds its own terrifying secret. Parents often report their children talking to an invisible friend named Billy near the climbing frames, a friend who describes dying in a fire. Several children have come home with unexplained burns that vanish within hours. Night guards have seen shadowy figures crawling through the plastic tunnels long after closing, their movements too quick and jerky to be human. The most chilling incident occurred when a staff member checking security footage saw a child-sized figure standing perfectly still in the middle of the play area at 3 a.m. As they watched, the figure's head slowly turned 180 degrees before the feed suddenly cut to static. But the darkest energy surrounds the park's ancient well, preserved as a decorative feature near the entrance. Visitors who peer into its depths sometimes see faces staring back, faces that mouth silent screams. Coins tossed into the well occasionally come flying back out with unnatural force. Groundskeepers have found the water inexplicably boiling on cold mornings, giving off a sulfurous stench. Local legend claims this well was used during Cornwall's witch trials, and the park's construction disturbed whatever, or whoever, was left at the bottom. Workers laying the park's foundations in the 1980s reported nightmares of hands scratching at their windows and a woman's voice whispering, "You shouldn't have dug me up." With its history of mining disasters, witch persecutions, and forgotten graves, Camel Creek's happy atmosphere sometimes cracks to reveal something far older and angrier. The laughter of children often mixes with phantom coughing fits, the sound of pickaxes striking stone where no workers are present, and the occasional scream that seems to come from underground. Come for the fairy tales, but leave before the fog rolls in, because in Cornwall's haunted valley, some stories don't have happy endings. If your child mentions their coal dust friend, or you feel something brush past you near the old well, don't stay to investigate. The park's original residents don't like sharing their land with the living. 10 Fantasy Island. Fantasy Island in Lincolnshire promises magical adventures by day, but as night falls, something far more sinister awakens across its sprawling grounds. Built on land that was once a World War II airfield and later a marshland where medieval plague victims were dumped, the park seems to stir ancient horrors with every new attraction. The most commonly seen ghost is the Aviator, a spectral figure in tattered flight gear who appears near the park's observation tower. Visitors report seeing a man in an old-fashioned bomber jacket staring blankly at the sky before walking straight through solid walls. Staff members have heard the ghostly roar of Spitfire engines at midnight, followed by screams that cut off abruptly. Some believe he's the spirit of a pilot whose plane crashed into the marshes during the war, forever reliving his final moments. Others claim to have seen his waterlogged footprints appearing on dry pathways after closing time, leading to the park's lake before disappearing at the water's edge. The park's Jubilee Odyssey roller coaster has developed a terrifying reputation among thrill seekers. Riders sometimes feel an invisible presence squeezing into seats beside them during the ride's 90-foot drop. Maintenance workers checking the tracks at dawn have reported seeing blackened, skeletal hands gripping the rails before vanishing. The most chilling incident occurred when a group of teenagers stayed late to take photos. They captured a clear image of a burned face grinning at them from the coaster's highest point, its hollow eyes tracking the camera. Staff now refuse to service the ride alone after multiple reports of being pushed by unseen hands near the steepest inclines. But the park's darkest secret lurks beneath the Splash Lagoon water park. Construction workers digging the foundations in 1999 reportedly uncovered dozens of human skeletons, victims of the Black Death hastily buried centuries ago. Since then, visitors have reported seeing pale, emaciated figures standing motionless in the wave pool's deepest sections, their plague-ridden faces barely visible beneath the water's surface. Lifeguards have pulled screaming children from the pool who insist the sick people tried to pull them under. At night, security cameras often capture wet footprints leading from the pool area to the changing rooms, though all doors remain locked. With its history of wartime deaths, plague pits, and tragic accidents, Fantasy Island's magic comes with a terrible price. The screams of excited guests sometimes blend with phantom aircraft engines, the sound of coughing from empty changing cubicles, and the occasional splash when no one's in the water. Come for the thrills, but leave before sunset, because when the park's lights go out, something else turns them back on. If you hear propellers in the dead of night or see skeletal hands gripping your ride photo, don't wait around. The island's past doesn't like visitors, and it always claims a few who stay too late.